AI can't find every bug in your code before you ship it. So why are we still getting breached? Here is what the scanners miss. They don't know what happens when the code actually runs. They don't know what authorization will break in production. They don't know which business logic will fail under real user behavior. There are endpoints that your developers did not even know that they exposed. How to solve these problems? Today, we have with us Joe Sullivan, CEO and founder of Joe Sullivan Security LLC, and he has spent 2 decades protecting some of the biggest platforms on the internet: Meta, Uber, Cloudflare. You can't go bigger than that. And he has also lived through one of the most high profile security incidents in tech, where the government accused him of covering up a breach at Uber. He was convicted, he fought back, and he came out the other side with a clearer perspective than anyone on what security really means when your reputation is on the line. No one knows better than him. Now he has joined the board at StackHawk that focuses on runtime security testing. Joe, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me on. It's great to be here.
It's my pleasure. You're a known name in this space, and there's a lot of history and story behind, your own career as well. I would love to just take us back to the beginning. How did you, from being a federal prosecutor to becoming the chief security officer at some of the most prominent tech companies in the world? Meta, Uber, Cloudflare, a lot of innovation happens at those companies. So talk about your journey, please.
Yeah, I think in my career, I've always tried to go to the next thing, not because I was following some path that someone told me to follow, but because it looked like the most challenging and interesting thing I could do next. I feel like through my career, I've always felt like this is the best job for me right now. And when it no longer felt like it was the best job, I started looking for the next one. And I was always interested in computers and technology. So even though I was in the Department of Justice in the federal government, I think I joined when we used Wang WP for our word processing. So it wasn't the most advanced technology organization. They did give me access to the internet directly from my office in 1995, right at the beginning of my career. I think I got out of school and I started bugging them, can I have internet access? And it kind of went from there.
Can you also talk a bit about how you got into this security world? What attracted you towards security?
Well, I think when I was growing up, I wanted to join the government. I think, a mission-oriented person. I like doing jobs that are kind of a bit public service oriented, so to speak. And I went into government right out of school, and that was something that I had intended to do all along. And I don't think I ever imagined going into the private sector and business. I didn't really know a lot when I was in school about what it was like to be in the business world, because I just wasn't exposed to it growing up. And I went into government, and then I started doing cybersecurity related cases as a prosecutor. And cybersecurity in the 1990s, when I got involved, was very interesting, very challenging. It was evolving so quickly. It's still evolving quickly. And the pace of change, the technical complexity, but also the human element. A lot of what we do in cybersecurity at the end of the day is all about protecting humans from risk. And those things are what attracted me to it.
One little spot on your career is that the whole incident at Uber, where you're accused by the government for the covering up security breaches. It was back in 2016, and you were convicted as well in 2022. Can you walk us through what actually happened there from your perspective? I want to hear your side of the story.
Yeah, well, for starters, I cringe every time I hear someone refer to it as a data breach, because in our view, it wasn't. It was a successful security investigation by my team, and I'll stand by that and their work forever. We got contacted by outsiders who said they'd found a vulnerability. We worked with them. We made sure the vulnerability was fixed. They had taken some user data to make sure to prove that they had the access, like researchers and hackers sometimes do. And we found them, we physically interviewed them, and we made sure that the data was deleted so that our customers would not be harmed. The case at the end of the day wasn't about access or unauthorized access. It was about how we as a company interacted with the government. The United States government took the view that Uber should have informed the government about that case. And I'm not a legal expert on that side, and I never was, because even when I was a prosecutor, I wasn't doing that kind of analysis. I was focused on investigations and prosecutions. And in the private sector, I was far from acting as an attorney during the time. I was acting as the chief security officer, and I'd been working on the security side of things exclusively. And we had a legal team, and we leaned on them, and they were involved from beginning to end of the investigation, and they said we didn't have an obligation to disclose. So at the end of the day, when we finished the investigation, we wrapped it up, and we thought it was very successful. We even invited the two young men to come out to our headquarters and speak to our team. A member of my team referred them to a security company so that they could get jobs. We just looked at the case fundamentally differently than the rest of the world because of how some people chose to characterize it in the media. And, at the end of the day, I understand why the government wants transparency from companies. I think companies and the government need to have better communication and collaboration on security. Neither side can do it alone. And so it's a hard situation. I'm a big advocate for transparency, but the company I was involved with chose not to be transparent, and I've had to live with that ever since.
If you had to redo it, or if a lesson can be learned from it for CISOs, what is the right way to maintain balance, company's image, company's own policies, government requirement, and transparency? And the biggest thing is security.
Yeah, I think you're right. The world has changed a lot since 2016, when my team and I responded to that incident. I think we did a lot of things right that I wouldn't change at all. The way we looped in and including the legal team and the communications team in the processes, escalating and making sure the CEO signed off on everything. But we still don't have really good clarity the way that we should, in terms of we don't have a national clear data breach law in the United States. We never have. There's been a lot of debate about it. There's a lot of chaos in terms of evolving expectations. But I do think I would speak up more for transparency now. I didn't think my job as the operational person was to try and overrule the legal team, especially someone who had a legal background like me. If I came weighing in on something, maybe they would have listened to me more. But I tried to stay in my lane. I guess I'd have to get out of my lane more now when I talk to security leaders. And believe me, I talk to a lot of security leaders about this challenging area. We don't try and balance it. We try and do it all. We have to. It's not our job to balance the risk and the opportunity. It's our job to come up with the technical controls and to recommend them. But, we're not the CEO of the company. A security leader said to me not too long ago, we don't control the budget that we get. We don't control the company culture, and we don't control the company appetite for risk. All of those things are decided at the CEO and board level. And so when we join an organization, we need to make sure we understand where the board and the CEO stand on those issues. And we need to be comfortable because, unfortunately, at the end of the day, we're the ones who are going to own it, whether we have the authority or not. Because when you stop an average person on the street and you say, that company had a security incident, and that company has a person with a title that has chief and security and officer in it, people are going to say, yeah, that person's responsible. So the role has grown up in terms of responsibility. It still doesn't have the authority that comes with that responsibility in some cases. But if we stay in a corner and we try and solve everything by ourselves, we are not going to succeed. We have to make the rest of the leadership team at our company understand the opportunities and risks in cybersecurity, and we need to see shared ownership. And I think we're headed in that direction. We're seeing a lot more situations where the CEO and the board are being held accountable as much as the security leader. And if we can get that, if we can get to that place consistently, then I think the holistic leadership of the company will have to take ownership of these risks. And that's the world we want to be in.
I mean, that would be a perfect segue because you have joined the board at StackHawk, which focuses on runtime security testing. Talk a bit about, first of all, what made you decide to join them, and second is that you just shared a problem that just because you have CISO in your title, you don't have too much influence, but things are changing, and these things change at board level. So with this joining, how can you bring that change that you feel like it should be there through joining StackHawk board?
Well, over the last few years, I was very fortunate. I got to land on my feet 3 years ago after my case ended. The judge wrapped it all up by saying, this was an unprecedented case. There was no financial motivation for the action, and the outcome was not a cover-up. That's what he said. What my team and I did was not a cover-up, and so he rejected the government request that I be sent to prison, and he sent me on my way. And I've landed on my feet. I've been operating my security consulting business. I don't just speak to security leaders. I speak to company leaders a lot now. I get to be involved in boards. I get to be involved in leadership discussions across lots of different industries. And I've kind of taken on a responsibility for speaking up for our profession a little bit and, reminding people of the issues. I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through. And part of that is I get to be on the cutting edge of what's happening in security right now. And security, cybersecurity, it's never been more interesting. It's never been more challenging, and it's never been more rewarding. The evolution and kind of like fast changes that are coming right now because of the introduction of AI into technology, the way AI is changing our development life cycle, is amazing and scary at the same time. We keep hearing about how AI is changing every job and the future is going to be different. Well, in early 2026, we can say for certain one profession has fundamentally changed already because of AI, and that is software engineering. So when I, as a security leader, look at the impact of AI and where the risks and opportunities are, I want to go to the places where it's really most interesting, where it's really most challenging. And right now, I think that's application security. So it was interesting. At the beginning of this year, I put up a post on LinkedIn, and I said, my word of the year is runtime. And the reason I said that is I was thinking about how AI is impacting security. And if we zoom out away from application security and think more generally about security as a whole, we've always kind of approached it with from two directions. In cybersecurity, our goal is prevention. Let's prevent harm from happening before nobody gets hurt. So prevention is ideal. But we also recognize that this is an adversarial situation, and we don't always prevent the bad guys from getting in. And so that's why every mature security organization has a large percentage of the team focused on detection and response. We essentially have to assume that we failed at the entry level prevention and that we're going to focus on detection. And so I said my word for the year in 2026 is runtime, because in AI, I felt like in 2025, we were just focused on the prevention side. How do we stop a prompt injection attack before it happens? How do we stop poisoning of the model? How do we prevent these things from happening? And I realized we're not always going to prevent the bad thing from happening out of the gate. We've got to invest in kind of the next level, runtime. Runtime, to some people means a very specific thing, related to a very narrow corner of security, but I think it means real time as the action is happening, as the code is operating. And so we go into the context of application security where the changes happen the fastest. We're seeing that there are so many new products on the market that have changed the developer experience, and they were also eroding our traditional approach to application security. So, traditionally we would pair SAST, static analysis, with DAST, dynamic. dynamic is much more focused on, okay, let's not just look at the code line by line, but let's look at it in action. And so in the context of application security, I'm very interested in runtime for a bunch of different reasons. And so when I got the opportunity to work with StackHawk, I jumped at it. I generally like to work with companies, and I've tried to do board and advisory roles in spaces where I thought I could add something to the company, but I also thought I would learn. Because when you get involved with an organization that's focused in an area, you really get to see what's happening in the weeds. What I want to know what's happening with StackHawk's customers, how they're seeing AI impact security, and how we can help them. And so it's been a pretty exciting journey so far.
I just want to dig runtime a bit. When it comes to just purely scanners, what are the things that they miss? You already talked about, yeah, it's good to see a car or car in your garage, but you have to put it on the road to actually see. And it's not just how it runs. Brakes, do they work? Will the airbag will be deployed in time? So they're like, so when it comes to security, it's all about will the authorization break? What about access management? What about the whole business logic? What about when traffic? What about zero day attacks? So there are so many things that scanner itself cannot. So can you talk a bit of runtime plus AI bypasses or actually helps overcome some of the. Also, the interesting thing is that AI is generating a lot of code, and the volume it's generating is massive. I mean, I use here a lot too myself. Sometimes it takes more time for me to actually review what it has done than to actually create that script. So can you also talk about the edge that it provides the scanners, what they mean, the traditional way where it's failing and where we see that this is the future?
Yeah, you're right. The data that I have seen from inside StackHawk shows very clearly that developer velocity is way up. The amount of code that's being generated is unprecedented. A good developer can get a lot more done with the assistance of AI than they could before. With our traditional testing tools before the introduction of AI, we were already struggling with the sheer volume of vulnerabilities that we were surfacing and the amount of noise from low importance vulnerabilities. And DAST has always been a good way to kind of cut through the noise. Like you said, seeing what's happening when the car is in motion tells you a lot more than looking at it in the garage. And so DAST really has traditionally always been a helper in prioritization of the long tail of vulnerabilities that get surfaced from the static analysis. But even more so, the AI companies that are building these new coding tools they're very invested in making sure that the code quality is high. Now, coming out of the gate, the code quality wasn't really any higher than it was when humans were writing at 100%, and that's because the AI models were trained on human coding. But there also there's a feedback loop in there, and so systemically we have to believe that the AI code generation tools are going to consistently get better at reducing the vulnerabilities coming out of the gate to the extent that they can. To the extent that they can look at the static code and understand and identify vulnerabilities, they're going to do that, and that's going to be awesome. But like you said, when we put code into action, we run into new types of vulnerabilities. Like you said, business logic. Business logic is something that's really hard to think about and test, in the static context. You kind of have to get over to the actual environment where the code's going to run to understand the complexities of it all. And that's where DAST comes in again.
If you were a CISO today and you are watching your company's developers use AI coding assistants that are churning out thousands of lines of code every week, what is your advice to them how they should, so that it maintains a balance between the velocity without compromises on security?
The short answer for security leaders is you don't have a choice. You have to get involved in these situations. And the reality of the impact of AI on organizations needs to come early to security organizations. We can't be a laggard in terms of understanding the implications of AI. We have to be leaders. We probably need to be the first team in the company that fully embraces the use of AI, fully understands the implications of AI, and fully like leads the organization into the new world. If we're in denial, we're going to be caught in a bad situation. And so I think that, as I said before, software engineering is the number one most impacted profession in terms of the change of day-to-day life because of AI. And it's our job to make sure that the code that's coming out is secure at the end of the day. And so we've got to invest in understanding the risks and opportunities here. We've got to look at, okay, where are these AI IDEs and the like where are they going to continue to get better, but where are the risks? And we've got to go run to the spaces where the risks are and be the first ones to identify them and be on top of them. We don't have a choice.
Can you talk about beyond runtime and technology? What else was in StackHawk where you felt they have the right culture also? Because you do need that as well. The companies, they do understand, which attracted you to join their board.
I was excited to join the board of StackHawk because, number one, the company is focused on the area of application security that I think is most important. I think application security is most in the spotlight right now. And the company, it's interesting. The world seems to me to fit into companies that are AI first and AI native versus companies that are trying to bootstrap AI into a large organization that preexists. And StackHawk's kind of in that sweet spot that they came along at the right time. We're evolving and building their product at the right time. And so there's just a lot of opportunity for the organization, and it's an exciting time to be part of it.
Joe, thank you so much for joining me and sharing these insights, sharing your journey. It's quite clear after listening to you that the shift from static code scanning to runtime validation is something every security team needs to think about, especially as AI accelerates how fast we are shipping code. So I really appreciate your time today, and thanks for being on the show, and I look forward to chat with you again. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
And for those watching, if you are facing similar challenges around runtime security or trying to figure out how to test what your code actually does in production, or you want to ensure how to maintain balance between company's image, company's policies, transparency, and government requirements, please do learn more about Joe Sullivan. And also don't forget to check out StackHawk and its solutions. And don't forget to subscribe to TFIR, like this video, and share it with your team. Thanks for watching.